I have 6 o'clock. I think Pat did tell us he was maybe not going to be here last time. Calling this meeting to order in council chambers here at 6. We do not have any remote electronic attendance, so we move to board appointments. Mayor's appointment of Katie Hyleton to the Special Service Area 6 Board to fill the unexpired term of Chelsea Waterman, expiring September 30th, 2023, in addition to a full 3-year term to expire September 30, 2026. Mayor's reappointment of Wendy Harrell to the Police Pension Fund Board for a full 2-year term to expire April 30th, 2025. Mayor's reappointment of Bill Grimes to the Firefighters Pension Fund Board for a full 2-year term to expire April 30th, 2025. Mayor's reappointment of Brian Vinke to the Firefighters Pension Fund Board for a full 2-year term to expire April 30th, 2025. And Mayor's reappointment of Jeff Dismer to the Historic Preservation Commission for a full 3-year term to expire April 20th, 2026. And with that, we move to our presentation, the IAWPCO Award, Best Operated Wastewater Treatment Works. Mr. Lodi.
Good evening, Your Honor. I'm pleased to announce to you all tonight that your North Slope Wastewater Treatment Plant has been selected by the Illinois Association of Water Pollution Control Operators as the best operated treatment plant in the state. And we're particularly proud of this. As you can see, we have a number of staff here tonight, and specifically we're honored because the agency that nominated us was the EPA, and sometimes the relationship between us and the regulating agency can be a little difficult because their job by nature is to enforce the environmental regulations on us. But we're proud of the fact that they looked upon us amongst all the other treatment plants that they oversee as one that they would nominate. And Mayor Rayapati was notified of this about a month and a half ago, and we mistakenly thought that we had won then, but we jumped the gun. So I would be remiss if I didn't commend this board for their difficult votes that were made along the way to fund important improvements to the facilities there at North Slope, as well as individuals like Alderman Waldron, J.D. Schulte, and Greg Swanson that were in leadership roles during the time when those facility improvements were being planned and financial planning was being done and construction was being implemented. So kudos to those and all of those that came before, because those that came before and did the planning, our team now is really just standing on their shoulders. So Greg Piles is here. He's going to talk to you real briefly about the criteria by which we were judged for the award.
Thank you, Your Honor and Councilman. As Tony said, we were nominated by the Environmental Protection Agency of Illinois, and the criteria were environmental compliance, regulatory compliance, preventive maintenance, operator knowledge, safety programs, and public outreach. It's a great honor. I came here 4 years ago to be introduced after being brought on to the city of Moline, and at that time I spoke about what a unicorn this was. It's a unicorn because the city of Moline is invested in their utilities infrastructure. You have great leadership. JD, Greg Swanson, and Tony have done not only the hard work day to day, but have also been visionary and thought into the future. And also we have a great team. The staff that I have worked with here is the best staff that I've had in my 32 years of wastewater experience. So on behalf of the WPC, we'd like to present this plaque to the mayor to be prominently displayed in your office. And we're also thinking about coming out with the scented candle line. So
from the wastewater treatment.
Thank you again and congratulations. We will keep this carefully. There we go. And thanks to everyone who's played a part in this honor. So we move then tonight to proclamations. Is there anyone here from Abate, Illinois? Great. Would you like to say a few words before I read the proclamation? You can come on up to the podium.
Good evening, Your Honor, Councilman and women. My name is Angela Winkle. I am the secretary. I am the membership coordinator for our local ABATE chapter, Blackhawk. And I would like to thank you for the proclamation for making motorcycle awareness as it is for the month of May.
Great.
We appreciate it.
I'll be happy to read it now. The proclamation states, whereas safety is the highest priority on the highways and streets of our city and state, and the great state of Illinois is proud to be a national leader in motorcycle safety, education, and awareness. I apologize, I have something in my eye. And whereas motorcycles are a primary, common, and economical means of transportation that reduces fuel consumption and road wear and contributes in a significant way to the relief of traffic and parking congestion. And whereas it is especially meaningful that the citizens of our city and state be aware of motorcycles on the roadways and recognize the importance of motorcycle safety. And whereas the members of Abate, Illinois, Inc., a brotherhood aimed toward education, continually promote motorcycle safety, education, and awareness in high school drivers' ed programs, and to the general public in our city and state, presenting motorcycle awareness programs to over 120,000 participants in Illinois over the past 8 years. And whereas during the month of May, all roadway users should unite in the safe sharing of roadways within the city of Moline and the state of Illinois. Now, therefore, I, Sangeetha Rayapati, Mayor of Moline in the great state of Illinois, in recognition of 36 years of Abate of Illinois, Inc., and over 352,318 registered motorcyclists statewide, and in recognition of the continued role Illinois serves as a leader in motorcycle safety, education, and awareness, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as Motorcycle Awareness Month. Congratulations. And our second proclamation is from the Quad Cities Open Network. Is there anyone here from QCon? Great. You want to come on up?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council persons. I'm Cecilia Bailey, the Executive Director of the Quad Cities Open Network here in Moline, Illinois. And we work as the fiscal agent for the Zero Suicide Initiative under the Quad Cities Behavioral Health Coalition, which is a group of about 63 health and human service agencies who are working towards the advancement of behavioral health here in the Quad Cities. So we are so happy to be here and so pleased that you have honored us with this proclamation.
Thank you so much. And the proclamation reads, whereas mental health is essential to our physical health and the overall health of our community, and whereas the most recent community health assessment indicates there is a great opportunity for our community to work together to increase the mental health of our residents, and whereas the Quad Cities has a significantly higher rate of chronic depression and persons being treated for mental health than the U.S. average, and whereas educating the public on the resources available to the community, encouraging the community to seek help if a mental health crisis occurs, and working to inform practices and build collaborative efforts to help strengthen the mental health of the Quad Cities will positively impact the mental health of our community. And whereas the Quad City Behavioral Health Coalition is working to share this message and bring innovations and initiatives to our community to advance the behavioral health of the Quad Cities. And whereas the Mental Health Month campaign and information about awareness, including that green is the mental health awareness color, can be found at qcbhc.weebly.com. Now, therefore, I, Sangeetha Rayapati, Mayor of the City of Moline, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2023 as Mental Health Awareness Month. Thank you so much. All right. Do we have any public comment this evening, Chief? All right, hearing none. Questions on the agenda. One additional item is being moved. 15.1 is being moved to the non-consent agenda. So into number 18. Move to our informationals, Mr. Vitas.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. You have in your agenda packet the 2022-2024 Action Plan Dashboard for fiscal year '23, end of the first quarter report. And if you've taken a close look at it, I mean, I want to give credit where credit is due. The staff is doing an outstanding job of pushing this council's agenda forward on all the strategic goals. It's just incredible where we're at today in relationship to where we started back in '21. And I want to give them credit where credit is due. Going forward, of course, we'll be looking at new strategic plan discussions in May with the new council. And it'll be great for them to obviously see where you started, where you're leaving. You're basically handing off the gavel to them going forward, and coming up with new goals for the city going forward, and not forgetting those that were started and have yet to start. There's very few left, but we will keep pushing forward this agenda. And I just want to thank the outgoing council for all their work on working with this staff and this mayor and this other all collective council members to create what I think is probably one of the more meaningful tools here going on in the Quad Cities. Things are really going well in Moline. So if there's questions, great. If not, I'm always available to answer those.
Yes, Mr. Went?
Well, this is the same one I bring up all the time.
I hope I have the right same.
Well, for 2.1E, the initiative for the single and multifamily residential licensing, I mean, it says it's 80% done. It still doesn't say licensing anywhere in your report. And that ordinance still is, I think you'd said maybe months away or something like that. And so that, I still have that concern. It is the intention that it is going to be a licensing regime, and that's going to be the approach, because it still hasn't made it into the report after all these months.
No, I mean, the entire subject of housing, whether it's new construction, renovations, inspections of single-family, inspections of multifamily, all of that, Airbnbs, VRBOs, that is all part of what's going to be a comprehensive program, with somebody leading that effort, because it is a multifaceted issue in the city, and bringing about a resolution to it, or enforcement of the ordinances as they were written originally, because we have good ordinances. That is the challenge, is working toward that goal. And I know during the roundtable discussion where we did present all issues housing, our biggest challenge is going to be financial, is having the people to actually carry the workload forward, because it's a huge project. There's a lot of property in this city.
Yes, Mr. Went?
With all due respect, you didn't answer the question about the inspections. I understand, and that's what we talked about, that you need a number of inspectors to do the inspections of all of these things. Licensing, on the other hand, is not as intensive. I'm not against the inspections, but every time I bring this up about licensing, because the licensing gives the city much greater teeth, not only for that particular property that may be troublesome, but for those property owners that are absentee, that own a number of properties in Moline, and use them as cash cows, drain those things out, and deteriorate neighborhoods. You have much more control and teeth if you have a licensing approach. I just want to make sure, because there seems to be a refusal to talk about licensing included in your report, or for you even to acknowledge, yes, we are going to have licensing.
Yeah,
And that's going to be
I've worked in
proposed.
communities with licensing, and for the very reasons you just outlined. And there was a reason for it. It was to deal with transient rentals and VRBOs and, derelict properties, and sometimes companies that, property management companies that just don't take care of property.
Or aren't even licensed.
Correct, correct. So long, and again, I mean, we will definitely seriously look at licensing as a tool in order to address those issues you just pointed out. Because those are serious issues.
Thank you. Any further questions about 8.1? Okay. Okay, hearing none, we
Thank you.
move to 8.2, an ordinance amending Chapter 8, Buildings and Other Construction and Building Services of the Moline Code of Ordinances. Article 2, Building and Residential Codes, Division 1, Moline Building Code, Section 82101. Amendments to the building code pertaining to the city's adopted building code and amending Chapter 25, Planning and Development of the Moline Code of Ordinances. Article 4, Historic Preservation by enacting one new section, 25-4112, demolition of structures 50 years old or older, to create procedural safeguards prior to the demolition of potentially historically significant buildings, and consecutively renumbering the remaining subsections of Article 4, Historic Preservation, as set forth herein. Sean Foley or Mr. Vitas?
Yeah, no, Sean, this is Sean's, Sean's project, and he's been working with historic preservation
You could come to the.
folks specifically on this issue, so just a brief overview would be in order, Sean.
You hear me? Okay, so I'm here, and so is Dan Meisner. He's from the Historic Preservation Commission, a commissioner who's been here at the beginning of this whole ordeal. So if you want some actual history, he's your man. So when this first came up, it was, which Dan has told me, because a bank building got demolished, without any notice. So at some point, which is back in December 2019, one of the commissioners proposed modeling an ordinance similar to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, to review demolition permits, and they currently do that in Cedar Rapids, which I have looked at before. So that was December 2019, and it was talked about in several meetings over subsequent months. And Joe Kuhlenbeck from the Building Inspection Department reviewed it in July. And he agreed with what was called the wording of the second draft. And that's what this ordinance was based on. It went back to Corporation Council, and they wanted some changes. The commission felt it was too restrictive. They made some more changes. By September of 2020, it made it to City Council when Alderman Potter was an alderman. And it was discussed until October 27th. And basically, in that particular case, according to the council minutes, they moved to table indefinitely that particular code amendment. And they focused on trying to identify 50 buildings that were 50 years or older that were significant, coming up with a list, and maybe having only those buildings be reviewed for possible demolition permits if they ever came about. And so through 2021, the commission basically says they're going to reintroduce the ordinance after the new council has been seated. That was in April of 2021. At the end of September, that's when I came aboard. And it was discussed, and there was what was called that second draft. That was what the commission wanted. What the Corporation Council had come up with was too complicated, they felt. So they wanted to go back to that. So that was reintroduced last year around either the end of July or the beginning of August. I don't have the exact date on that. Council looked upon it somewhat favorably and had us correct some typos and things like that. And then we sent it back to Corporation Council again. And that took a while to go through, but basically that's been put now into this ordinance form, which is different than the old one. And this is what the Corporation Council came up with based on what was called that second draft, and that was the thing that was reviewed last year. So that's where we're at this point. I understand, though, there are some concerns about the ordinance and perhaps like how old things are before they get reviewed, that sort of thing. So this is an informational item, and we're here to get comments and see where the commission is at on this particular issue. And again, I have Dan Meisner here, if you want some information from him about the history of this project.
Thank you. Questions from the council? It came back at informational, I believe, because of where it was at, right? It has to come back to us where it left. I'm curious about where any kind of guidelines that the Historic Preservation Commission uses if this were to pass and they have a building come to them, right, as a possibility. Is there an internal system that or series of questions that they could use as a commission just to talk it through? Or is there a plan to have it be as projects come to them, they look at them in total and they just move from there? I'm happy to see flexibility in how things are done. I also recognize that internal guidance that they have doesn't have to be in the ordinance, but they could have something that they use to talk through this, because members of the commission change, people have different expertise levels, right?
Sure.
And they're not making the final decision, I realize, right, the way this is written, on whether something's demolished or not, unless I understand that incorrectly. But I still wonder, what is the commission going to be talking about in terms of what is historically significant?
That's a good question. I don't know if, we haven't come up with a procedural review process or anything like that. Really, it's been just getting this back to council again to begin with. There is a small amount of design guidelines that builds into the ordinance itself that generally would refer to like a historic district or a landmark that's been designated by the city as a local landmark. Then generally we fall back on the Secretary of the Interior standards for renovation of historical properties.
Okay.
So that's
helpful information. Mr. Moyer?
Thank you. Yeah, so we spent quite a bit of time talking about this over the last few years. The language that the historic, or that's in this is what comes from the State Historic Association, the 50-year guidelines and so on and so forth. What they're really looking for is a pause so that they can, if it's going to be demolished, they want to get materials out of there. They want to try to negotiate that, and at least they want to be able to get a historical record if it's possible. They will have no authority to be able to do that. You know, it's really the goodwill of the property owners. So, yeah. So I think
You're
it's
okay
really,
with as written?
there is a lot of flexibility in that. They're going to try to get whatever they can.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Went?
Yeah, I mean, some of the concerns, and I think that there may be some confusion on what was just said. I mean, this is citywide. This is not just in the historic districts. This isn't just designated, because I think through all of this maturation, I think the council has always said, hey, those things, and that's where they will give us a list if it's in these districts, all of that 100% makes sense. I think some of the concern is that you've got a garage that was built in 1971. This could wind up delaying it for 2 months while you're searching to see if there was a former CEO of Deere used to store his car. I mean, you just don't know. And so that where the 50 years just blanket across the thing, and if they say, hey, if in doubt, okay, we get 15 business days to review, and then unilaterally with no criteria can say, we want another 30-day hold on it. I mean, that was some of the concerns, and I appreciate it. I mean, clearly, we've gone through maturations to save old buildings, and I've spent more time trying to save stuff than probably needed to be torn down occasionally, but so I'm all for that. The concern is that you wind up with too much of a bureaucratic mess for something that was built in 1970 that may or may not have, and that's where I think that the idea of if it's in a designated area, if it is a historically designated property, or if the plant or the historic commission wants to come up and say, yeah, but we know that this property was built in the 30s and that's really historic and this is historic and this is historic. that makes a whole lot of sense. This whole blanket thing, because I've run into enough of things when it comes in, you make an application to the city, you know, you're sitting around 3-4 weeks later and you still haven't heard anything. Oh, this didn't get over there. You know, that was the concern of the council before, and it just seems like we've gone right back to what had been rejected before, and we're just right back here now.
Got it. Mr. Williams?
And I share the mayor's concern, you know, with no criteria, we appreciate what the commission does, but I don't understand why the commission can't go out and identify a tract like it would be downtown, and then identify 50 or 75 properties, and already on the front end have identified historically significant homes or businesses in Moline that you want to preserve, so you already done your homework, and you're not waiting for a demolition order. But just to have a blanket thing to tie everything up, I know it's labor intensive on the front end. It may take a year or two to do it, but we've been tossing this around now for quite some time. And it makes sense for us to go and identify the commission, what we deem to be historic, and have that there and in-house and done prior to someone wanting to have something demolished.
Thank you. I think, and these were up before Mr. Wentz hands up. Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, I do not think, given the parameters that this ordinance has in place, that setting out to set those additional parameters for what is defined as historic. I mean, I think if we end up defining it, we are just setting ourselves up to miss and fail at saving something or identifying something that could have been in the future. The same is true of going out and identifying buildings. I just think that as we're, that would to me be a process that does not allow for a fair review of any building, of anything. I mean, because otherwise, I mean, are we going to drive up every single street in the city of Moline and look? Because there are buildings that may not be picked up as like, that's the absolute top one, but they are important. And in the way they have this here, I still get 51 days. 51 calendar days is the longest this process can delay the demolition of a building. That's as it lays out.
If it goes in.
At its extent. Because it is 15 business days for the initial decision to be made, and that starts a 30 calendar day clock. So 51 days is kind of there. I still think that's a little longer than I like, but it is much lower than the closer to 90 days that we had looked at in the original version that we had talked about. But I think that we are moving toward that opportunity to find that. And you have to identify it as a historic building within that 15 business days, which is 21 calendar days, basically. And I think that if we try to go down these restrictive paths, we're going to set ourselves up just to miss it completely again.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you. One other thing I should mention, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we have maybe 2 or 3 demos a year.
I don't have the exact number, but yeah, it's a handful.
It's just a couple demos a year, and then I think in the last 3 or 4 years, we've only had one building that we missed out on the ability to go in and maybe claim some of that historical material. This is probably going to come up every 2, 3, 4 years where there's going to be an opportunity, and I think that's what this stands in for. This isn't going to, you know, in my opinion, this is going to give us an opportunity that doesn't currently exist, and so I'm going to support it.
Okay.
I
Yes,
just got to
Mr.
get one
Williams.
more, because Barb Sandberg lives across the street from me, and I got issues. I just don't want to confuse old with historically significant. There is a difference, and I think we can get caught up in wanting to save everything, and that's not going to happen.
Okay, Mr. White?
Yeah, I mean, in Rock Island, they go out and they have done this. They've identified all the properties. In fact, actually, when you purchase things, they're even more restrictive on things you can do with those properties, not only just demolition. And so, yes, does it take work up front? Yeah, but then the property owner who purchased something and plans to do something knows what's going on. And I don't disagree. Our ordinance says, yeah, it should only be 51 days. How many discussions have we had here where ordinance aren't followed, things have gone on, it's 4 or 5 months later, we finally get around to things? I mean, that's our residents. If they want and are intending to do something, improve something, build something, if you are paying on a mortgage, a loan, 51 days could be really, really expensive if you're trying to turn around a building and do those things. And so having some information known up front, I think, would be extremely helpful. I am, and if they identify those things, 100%. I mean, take 90 days, take more days, because the people know about it up front, and they know what they're getting into and can understand it. When you wind up in a situation where, oh, somebody had built this garage or whatever the thing is, and if it's only 1 or 2 a year, I think we're holding up a bunch of people possibly for, like you said, maybe something that doesn't really happen. It's just another reason why people will point to Moline and say, I got to jump through flipping every hoop in the world to tear down the shed out behind my house, because I've got to wait, and somebody was sick and they didn't have a quorum, and so they had to wait another week. Now I'm just waiting for them. Are they going to do the 30? And maybe they don't do the 30 days, but that's still another 3 weeks I'm waiting for them to finally get together. Or if they don't get together, then I finally am approved to go through. It just seems wonky to me.
All right, Mr. Timian, and then I think we might start wrapping this up, because this is just discussion, and clearly there's been plenty of ideas shared for the next council to take it up if it comes to a vote. Mr. Timian.
I'm in full support of this. I think it is a nice catch-all that will filter out, these properties as they come, to the point that if there is one that ends up taking 2 months, I will be the first to amend the language to make it shorter. And that's a mechanism we have. If this is not followed, we can change the time frame. But as it is, I'm currently okay with how it is.
Thank you. Yes, you'd like to add something?
Dan Meisner, I'm the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. Thanks for looking at this. To kind of give you a little bit of backstory of how this all came about, many of you probably remember the bank that's set up on the corner of 15th and 16th Avenue. The way our ordinance currently reads, the property owner can have all the disconnects done. He can go down and apply for the permit for demolition. The minute he has that in his hand, which is just a stamp, basically, he could go and start tearing it down. All we're asking for is a little bit of time to have the opportunity to document the structure, because that was a wonderful Art Deco building that we have no records of whatsoever now. That's what prompted this whole thing to start. Point number 2 was a few months back, we did a demolition down here on 5th Avenue of a building. I was notified of it prior to demolition. And I went out and I took photographic evidence of the building, measured it up, wrote a complete description of the building, and I had it all done within 24 hours. That's what we're aiming to try and do. But if a building is deemed historically significant, we want the opportunity to be able to talk to the property owner and say, hey, can you amend what you're doing and maybe repurpose the building versus destroying it? This last fall, I had the wonderful opportunity of taking a cruise to Alaska. And while we were in Seattle, I was walking by a building, and it is an old Firestone building that they saved the original building, and then they were building a high-rise on top of it. And I would love to be able to convince folks that instead of tearing structures down, to repurpose them. And that's what this whole ordinance is about, is giving us that opportunity to at least talk to them before they put the shovel into the ground.
Thank you very much for that. I think we've got lots of information for folks to review in the future. Mr. Wendt.
Yeah, I got 2 questions. One, I agree on the 5th Avenue, that was our building. We tried to save it, tried to do as whatever we could to save it, and I wish we would have been able to, but unfortunately that didn't happen. But do we have the ability within our code through the historic, if they would have identified that bank in advance as a historic building, don't we have the ability within our code to designate certain properties as historic buildings within Moline?
Yes, we can designate a building as a local historic landmark, and then they need a certificate of appropriateness, it's called, in order to do something to the building. And so that has to go to the commission for them to review it, like they do with the John Deere house. So we got like maybe 20, 25, 26, I forget exactly, landmarks. We have the National Historic District, but that doesn't carry protections. If it's a local district, then it would, but there's none in Moline that are officially like that at this point.
So
As
that
far
old
as
bank, if,
demolition zoning should really be looking at every zone demolition anyway.
right, but to that point, if that would have been designated,
If
then
it
they
was
would have to prove
designated
up.
by ordinance, then yeah, then they
Then-
wouldn't be able to get pull a permit without
Yeah,
going
it's-
to the Historic Preservation Commission first.
Right, so all the things that he said that they were able to just do without anybody knowing it would have not been able to happen. They would have had to come get the, what do you say, certificate of appropriateness to demo it?
Yeah, so, but it has to be designated as a landmark, and generally that requires the owner to be on board with it. I mean, anybody could nominate one, but our ordinance, the way it's constructed, I believe it says that the landowner has to agree to do that. So,
Yeah, you don't know. Got it.
So maybe that should be something that we should look at if we can designate things.
Yep, last comment.
Yeah, just some final thoughts. It sounds like this doesn't happen very often, so there could be plenty of time before the next time we see this. Is that something that the commission could be working on to basically identify those as we go along? But it doesn't necessarily have to be part of this.
we're gonna be doing historic surveys. We're supposed to be doing that in our agreement with the state Historic Preservation Office. So that hasn't gotten off the ground yet, and you can't do the whole city all at once. It's just too extensive and expensive.
Okay. We'll be in touch either with the commission or through staff as well.
Just in reference to that, back in 1988, Augustana did a historic survey for the city of Moline. They had 480 some properties that were designated that could be historic. So to narrow it down to 50, it'd be nearly impossible.
Well, I mean, to that end, I think that when we had given that direction, I think we said, downtown, because that had already, in that discussion, we had said.
There's over
down-
100 properties there.
Exactly, so that was outside of, that wouldn't have been included in the 50 or 75. And we had said, I think, in that meeting specifically, if it needs to be more, that's fine, just come back with that list. And if you guys already have a list, then that really sounds like a really great place to start from. I mean, we've already got it, so you don't wind up with a situation of a house that was built in Homewood in the late 60s that all of a sudden is being, delayed for whatever period of time, may or may not
It's
be.
doubtful that very many of them will be delayed, very doubtful.
Well, and I hope not as well.
All right, so it's 2 years since, or no, I guess that we did it in 2021.
Started in
22.
19.
No, since the last.
Yeah, I mean, it's
know,
been
but
4 years.
yeah, exactly. So we will continue to try to address this apace, but we need to move on tonight. I appreciate all the information that shared and perspectives shared by our council members that have a lot of history with this particular ordinance. Thank you. So next is calling the regular council meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. O'Brien is not here for an invocation. We move to number 12. Roll call, please.
Alderperson Williams,
Present.
Macias,
Present.
Went,
Present.
Timian,
Present?
Moyer,
Present.
O'Brien, Waldron,
Present.
Schmidt.
Present.
Your Honor, I request approval of Committee of the Whole and Council Minutes of April 11th, 2023, Committee of the Whole and Council Minutes of April 18th, 2023, and appointments made during Committee of the Whole on April 25th, 2023. Second reading ordinances. Item 14.1, an ordinance amending Chapter 20, Motor Vehicles and Traffic of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Appendix 10 thereof, parking prohibited at any time, by amending the following locations. Extending 36th Avenue north side from 41st Street east from 40 feet to 80 feet.
Move to approve. Second.
That's just a
No,
first
we're
reading.
not quite.
Oh, wait, you're right.
We have a consent agenda
looking at the
resolutions, we
wrong
still have
thing.
15.2.
Yep, that's fine.
Please.
Resolutions. Item 15.2, a resolution authorizing the chief of police on behalf of the city of Moline to terminate the existing contract with Axon Enterprise in order to accept and execute a new 5-year contract with Axon Enterprise for in-car and body-worn camera systems for the police department in the amount of $1,500,000. Item 15.3, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement with Hutchison Engineering for conceptual design and community outreach for the upcoming 7th Avenue reconstruction project from 12th Street to 23rd Street.
Now,
Move to approve the consent agenda?
thank you.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Timian, seconded by Alderperson Macias. Roll call, please.
Alderperson Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, and that motion carries. Non-consent agenda, second reading ordinances. Item 17.1, an ordinance amending Chapter 6, Rights of Way and Public Property Uses of the Moline Code of Ordinances by repealing Chapter 6 in its entirety and enacting in lieu thereof one new Chapter 6 dealing with the same subject matter.
All right, is there a motion?
Move to approve?
Motion by Alderperson Timian, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderperson Macias. Discussion? Mr. Went?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I had asked to take this off the consent agenda because there's a number of things within it that I think that we need to discuss. We had talked about this at a roundtable. I think this started maybe in October. I provided, talking with staff and talking with Mid-American about, double poles and issues in our right-of-way. We had provided, I think I provided 10 locations. I think it took about 3 or 4 months. They got 2 of the 10 done, brought the thing back up again, tried to push it. We now, I think, have 6 of the 10 issues are completed, but there's still double poles, leaning pole. And so we've been told that this ordinance covers all those things. The federal guidelines cover it, and that it's no problem. We'll take care of those things, that things will be done. This group has 30 days, that group has 30 days, and these will be taken care of. But clearly not. I mean, we're now, if this started in October, we're the end of April, and I drove by them today, and like I said, 4 out of those 10 still are sitting that way. So I do want to make a couple of amendments here, and hopefully we'll be able to improve this. So the first one I want to talk about is double poles. A number of different communities, they actually define double poles within their ordinance. And one that I found in a number of places was any utility pole which is attached or in close proximity to another utility pole and located in the right-of-way, most commonly resulting when a new utility pole is installed next to an existing utility pole. And so I would like to make a motion to add to section 6-110130 and then change the numberings, because it's the definition section, change the numberings of everything down below so it actually goes in an alphabetical order. What I just read, that a double pole with is defined as any utility pole which is attached or in close proximity to another utility located in the right-of-way, most commonly resulting when a new utility pole is installed next to an existing utility pole.
Is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second it.
That's seconded by Alderperson Moyer. Discussion of the amendment?
And the reason I'd like this in there is because I'm going to do another amendment here that talks about a time frame in which those double poles would need to be taken care of, and you need to have it defined within the code so that that will make sense.
Mr. Moyer?
Can you give me the number again?
So for it to be alphabetically appropriate, it'd be 6-110130. would be where it would be in alphabetical order, and then the existing 30 would become 31, the existing 31 would become 32, and, because that's how our ordinance is drafted up.
Yes, Mr. Waldron and then Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to say here that we have rehashed this, Chapter 6, I don't want to say innumerable times, but quite a few times we've gone over it. I think we're going to have certain people, certain aldermen want to make amendments. We've gone over with staff, staff's gone over with utility companies. We've made a long headway here. Some people don't like this, some people like this. I think to save time here, I think we should go with what staff has recommended, what they've agreed with utility companies. So in light of that, I just can't support any amendments. I just want to let everybody know. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, just a question to staff. Given no definition of a double pole currently existing, how would that typically be defined, or what, is that coming from the state statute, or what is defining that and the need to relocate?
I'm not sure.
We need you at
You
the
need to get
podium,
the
sir.
podium.
Thank you. Or right there, yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you have a name tag? Okay. And a better chair, Mr. Dryer.
It's been so long since I looked at that, I'm not even sure, do we have a definition of double pole in the?
No, that's why it needs to be inserted.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, that definition, I don't know where it comes from, essentially, where the language Alder Wendt is proposing, if that was the question.
No, my question is more on.
What do we do now?
There is already in place a mechanism by which double poles would be removed. Where is that coming from?
Mid-American says that the National Electric Safety Code defines double poles. I think a lot of the issues was what had happened with some of the telecoms in Bettendorf, where one of the companies tried to short circuit, having to relocate to Mid-American poles, so they tried to install their own poles at a shorter height underneath power lines, which was a clear violation of the NESC code. And they were corrected by Mid-American and the industry, and those poles were subsequently removed. Now, Mid-American does admit that they do have some double wood out there, that they have some disconnects in their communications. I spoke to Mid-American today, and they are making progress. The slow point in the process is AT&T. They're perennially understaffed, and with the storms recently, everything has gotten pushed to try to clean that up. So that they're still trying to work that. They are working on the software to improve communications, and I guess I will stop there.
Mr. Wendt?
But to the point, and through this entire process, since October to the end of April, there has been every excuse under the book. And all we have asked for is just these 10. I mean, there are numerous other ones throughout the city. And so this idea that, oh, well, the national book says that you can't do it, so that it won't happen, clearly is not working. Because we've got them all over the city where we've got double wood. I've sent you guys all pictures multiple times of these things, and the same ones again and again. Even if we just said, hey, take your time, figure it out. Let's get a system in place. Here's just the 10 we want you to work on. It took them 3 months to get 2 out of the 10. And then I sent additional emails, followed up, pushed and pushed. So it's not just because we just recently had a storm. I mean, this has been going on for months and months and months. The problem is that we have no impetus within our code to force them to do any of these things. There is no penalty provision. I did talk with, exchanged with Margaret today, and there seems to be some, well, the penalty refers back to section 1, in which there's the 750, and then if they're willfully doing it, which we really don't have defined and don't really know exactly what that is, then maybe we could do that. But we're not penalizing them at all. The only people that are being penalized are our residents.
Your Honor, point of order. I think
Yes,
we've left
Mr.
the
Waller.
argument about double polls and moved on to something
These are
else.
all about
I
double
would like to
polls.
call the question on his amendment, and let's get at it.
Okay. Please remind me, legal counsel.
You need a second?
Yes, I'm asking the legal counsel, thank you. Ms. Christopoulos.
I have it pulled up here.
The call to question is, we need a second to Mr.
Yes,
Waldron's
we do.
motion. Is there a second? I see none. So that question is not called. All right. Please continue, Mr. Went.
Yeah, and so.
I do want to try to continue to maintain our order by, we do have our 2 comments per thing. So we're on an amendment. So if you could finish up this point, then we'll get to other hands raised.
And I was answering the question of that within our code, and I guess this is the point of information, what teeth, and I think this is more directly to what Alderman Schmidt was, what teeth do we have in this code to require them to, within a timely manner, actually reduce this, as you call it, double wood situations?
There's not a specific ordinance that I can call to, but I mean, we could, I presume, assuming Margaret concurs, is argue that it's a violation of the code and write them a notice of order to correct, and then give them that process to do.
Citing which code section?
That it's a violation of the NESC and probably some health, safety, and welfare language I'd have to dig through and find.
Ms.
I
Christopoulos.
can't recall a specific.
There isn't. I'll tell you, there isn't one.
No.
Because we've talked about this and we've
Yes,
gone through it.
there's no double wood in here yet.
Ms. Christopoulos, your
So
answer,
I
please.
was just going to point out, thank you, that our chapter 1 does have a very clear section about sanctions for a violation of the code. And it does say $750 for the first violation, and up to, or each willful violator could be eligible for $750 a day. Now, yes, I did acknowledge that willful is not defined in the code, but it is a fairly common legal term with a definition.
Thank you. Mr. Went.
And just to clarify, there was also the question, have we ever done any violation or fined anyone with this? And I still have never been able provided any time in the past where we've actually enforced in this. So to your point,
Not my point.
well, okay, to
So
the
then-
point of, is there anything in the code regarding this? There isn't. There's not even a reference to, what'd you say, the EI, I get the.
NESC.
In the code, I don't believe. And so what I'm trying to do is, let's put something in here that will give staff the teeth so that they can, at their option, enforce this and say, hey, no, you actually have to do this. We don't have to send you something, and now we're 6 months later, and you still haven't done it, and we really are at your mercy to do whatever you want. Make it clear in the code so that we can enforce.
Thank you.
And clear this up.
Is there anything further on this amendment? Yes, Mr.
I
Schmidt.
simply wanted to request that we have the definition restated prior to voting.
Okay. As we are now about to vote on this amendment, could you please restate the definition, Mr. Went?
And I guess before I start reading this doesn't address Mr. Dreyer's statement regarding those people who put extra poles in between poles and those that needs to be addressed as well, but I'm not drafting something up. I mean, we've asked staff multiple times to provide something. It's supposedly in this federal code, which will stop it from happening, but this is purely for a pole that goes next to a pole. They switch some wires over and the rest of the wires just stay, or they just never come back around and take the second pole out. So what this says is, it says any utility pole which is so a double pole is defined as Any utility pole which is attached or in close proximity to another utility pole and located in the right-of-way, most commonly resulting when a new utility pole is installed next to an existing utility pole.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, roll call, please.
Alderperson Waldron,
Yay.
Schmidt,
Nay.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Nay.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Nay.
Moyer.
Nay.
2 ayes, 5 nays.
Okay, the amendment does not pass. We're back to the original motion, which is what's stated in the agenda. Discussion, Mr. Wendt.
Well, I was going to make a motion that we actually give them tools to remove the double poles, but if everybody here just are okay with double poles, that's fine. But what I will make a motion for is to reject the change to 6-1118 within our thing that changes and gives the utilities 20 days rather than 10 days. I think it should stay at 10 days for them to fix or restore the area that they disturb in the right of way.
All right. Everyone understands that's a motion to amend 10 days from 20 days to fix the right of way.
No, to keep it at what it is,
Oh, sorry.
reject the change.
Oh, reject the change, thank you. Thank you. Is there any debate?
There's no second.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's a
yeah, sorry, actually. Thank you very much. Is there a second? Hearing none.
Second.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Williams. There's a second by Mr. Williams. Any debate? Mr. Wendt?
We're not enforcing this now, but I think extending and giving them an extra 10 days isn't going to help our enforcement. If we truly do have the ability to fine them, which clearly we haven't done historically, this will at least give us more teeth to require these utilities that tear up the area in front of people's houses and those sorts of things, and then sometimes come back, sometimes throw a little straw down, sometimes leave ruts, all of those things that they will, at least will have something to be able to hold them accountable, because currently we have a provision where they can post a bond or something like that, but when talking with staff, we've never triggered any of those bonds or anything historically in the past for any restoration. So again, it will take staff to actually implement and to enforce our ordinance, but this would give them, I think, better teeth to do it than pushing it to 20 days.
Mr. Timian?
Thank you, Your Honor. A two-point question for Director Dreyer. I guess the first is, why is, within this language, why are the right-of-ways and property 20 compared to the PED being 10, which I appreciate the distinction. But second, is it accurate that we are not enforcing this currently? Because I think we spoke earlier and you said that we've sent out a number of repair notices to these companies already. So those two statements seem in contrast with each other.
We have with the current telecoms working in the right of way. The change in the number of days, the utilities as part of our utility working group wanted, I think, 30 days.
That's correct.
Restoration. We said, no, that's too long. So we compromised and met halfway. But then there was the importance that Alder Wendt and other members of the council, as well as staff, want sidewalks and pedestrian and paths, if they are so damaged, to be restored quicker than what was proposed. So we recommended that to be to 10. And we are enforcing that, and we are working with our new right-of-way utility inspector who started Monday to keep track of that and to push restoration unless there is a reason why that sidewalk can't be restored.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Point of information.
Yes?
You had mentioned that a number of letters had gone out to these utilities. Were these letters that were fining them for violating it? Or were they in violation and it was just, hey, can you please really do what you're supposed to already do? letters?
We're just pushing them.
So we
basically.
haven't
Nothing
actually-
formally, no notices to corrective action, no.
No corrective action. That is the point.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing further, roll call on this amendment to reject the changes to, in 6-1118.
Alderperson Waldron,
Nay.
Schmidt,
Nay.
Williams,
Nay.
Macias,
Nay.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Nay.
Moyer,
Nay.
1 aye, 7 nays, or 6 nays. Amendment fails.
That amendment fails. So we are back to the original item. Yes, Mr. White?
Can I get a point of clarification? Just below that, we're adding in, and this is exactly what it said. It says, projects which disturb the right-of-way fronting developed and occupied properties, the utility shall be responsible to inform the property owner the timeline for restoration. When does that happen? Does that before they start a project? Is that after they finished a project? Is that after they have taken too long to restore it, saying, hey, we didn't do it in the amount of time?
That was added based on comments received from the council that they wanted the utilities to reach out to the property owners. And it maybe it's poorly phrased, but it should be at the onset of the project so that the property owners knows that what the plan is for restoration.
Okay, so then I would like to, if that's actually what we're trying to say.
That's what I'm trying to say.
All right, then I would like to add at the end of it, prior to the start of any project adjacent to such properties.
Fine.
A second.
All right, motion by Alderperson Went, seconded by Alderperson Timian. Any discussion? I think we've heard that. Roll call, please.
Alderperson Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
7
Okay.
ayes, no nays.
Thank you, that passes. Back to the motion, Mr. Went.
To Alderman Waldron's point, we did hash out a number of things, and one of the things we talked about was wires draping in front of traffic lights and cameras, and our concern with public safety and those sorts of things. And so I have two, and I've separated them into two different amendments, and we'll see how the first one goes to see if the second one winds up needing to be done. But the motion I am going to make is regarding that moving forward from the passage of this, moving forward, that there will be a prohibition from new wires being installed in front of our traffic lights or our cameras, in which there's a line of sight between it and the traffic lanes. The second is going to be a discussion regarding the ones that have been grandfathered in, that they would have a 3-year period of time to change that. So the first one I'm gonna make is to add in section 6114F, and this would be 3 that would be added. No above-ground facility shall be installed in front of or interfere with the traffic signal or camera. Interfere shall be defined as being located directly within the line of sight from any traffic lane and an existing traffic signal or camera. In no event shall any above-ground facilities touch or pass through any traffic signal or support at any intersection.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderperson Williams. Discussion. Mr. Schmidt.
That is so vague, so that I could be half a mile down, quarter mile, for visual reference, and a line crossing the street between me and a line quarter mile down the street would be found in violation, or could be found in violation. I mean, that is very poorly executed.
Well, actually, I had here, and because I had done the turning lanes, I said, And I should have probably read this, and it was a discussion point, so that is a good point. I had measured back, like 150 feet seemed to be about the right amount, but well,
I'm gonna, Mr. Schmidt has the floor.
yeah.
Please continue.
And the other comment is, as that concern was expressed, and we received an analysis coming back from our, I don't remember, Mr. Dyer, was that you that brought that
Yes,
back?
you did.
Unfortunately, it was me.
Specifically looking at what those rules are and how they are in place for a hindrance, and they are not, and most were not found in violation, though I think there were a couple flagrant examples of cutting through.
And those two companies have orders written on them, and they are making progress and relocating the offending cables. And again, AT&T is the one that has been the monolithic, slower agency.
Okay, thank you.
Well, then point of
Mr.
information,
Mr.
what
Webb.
do you need to actually get them to do what they're supposed to be doing then? I mean, if our ordinance doesn't provide you with the tools, and we're 6, 7, 8 months away, then
Unfortunately,
what
I
do you
didn't know we
need?
were gonna talk about the cables through our traffic signals. I can't recall what my ordinance number was that I noticed them on. It was probably obstructing our infrastructure. But they have gotten certified letters to correct their action on those two locations that you had noted, and at least MediaCom is making progress on it. So again, when they were piercing through literally the signal visors so that our electrician had difficulty opening the signal head door, that was problematic. The ones in advance, yes, they are aesthetic and they can be unattractive, but they weren't creating what I thought was a safety hazard based on the minimum stopping sight distance needed in advance of the traffic signal.
Thank you. Mr. Wendt, this is
Yeah.
your last comment on this particular
Thank you, Your Honor,
item.
for allowing me to speak. In those situations, I understand, but we have an aesthetic approach with our community. I mean, you may not care because it doesn't meet the book, because there's wires going in front of our signals and it looks trashy. But we as a city have the ability, if we want to, if I'm not correct,
absolutely.
that we could pass ordinances that said, you can't do that.
Okay, yeah.
And I think as these cables continue to get thicker and thicker, which it seems, because we talk about overlashing and those sorts of things we're allowing without permits and those sorts of things, that I think that we need to address those issues. And if we're not penalizing those people who are, I mean, I drove by that place where they pierced through our thing. It's still broken. I mean, they moved it, they kind of attached it to another line, and it's kind of hanging off to the side a little bit. It's not piercing through the thing anymore, but they damaged our property, and it doesn't seem like they're going to fix it. And there's other places where it's like hanging on the top of the visor of the traffic lights, and that's been going on for 6 months. And so I keep being told, well, we've got, our ordinance allows for us to enforce these things, but there's no movement on it. From your perspective, what are we supposed to do? Just wait, whenever they get around to it, they get around to it, and that's fine?
We've written notice and orders to correct, and the clock is still ticking for that, and when they don't complete the work, then we will work with Margaret and follow the process. It's the first time I've gone through it. I'm not sure how it works with the municipal court judge, and that's the process we'll follow.
How long ago?
Thank you, Mr.
Oh,
Wendt.
it was maybe sent 35, 30 days ago. I don't know exactly. I don't recall.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt has your hand up.
I think this issue has been brought up several times, and I don't think any time it has had enough support from the majority of the council to move forward any vote, and I don't think it's going to have that this evening either.
Okay. If there's nothing further on this amendment about the wires obstructing, which was very clearly stated, and you will
I'll
get that
send it to
written
her.
to her.
If it passes, I'll send it to her.
Sure. So roll call, please.
Alderperson Waldron,
Nay.
Schmidt,
Nay.
Williams,
Nay.
Macias,
Nay.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Nay.
Moyer.
Nay.
1 aye, 6 nays.
Okay, we're back to the item. Mr. Went.
The last question I had, so we're almost over, was in that meeting, we had talked about, you've got a provision, and I had sent an email about this, but hadn't heard back, that within Chapter 6, we added some language that talked about that in the event of moving, here, let me pull it up, says, the city may work under 61114, and this is the section that, the big section that was added in regarding if in the event that we're redoing an area and we want the stuff to go underground, it seems to indicate here that the city's gonna bear all the costs for that. That'll be at no cost to the utilities. And we had discussed in our roundtable, and I think Bob brought up the analogy, because I had asked, isn't there a way that we could put a provision in here that after a certain period of time, so it's not a takings, that they would then be required, if everything is going underground in that area, that they would be responsible for the cost of the movement. And I think, Bob, you used the example of billboards, that if you wait a certain period of time, I think you remember maybe that conversation.
Yeah, I do.
And we are supposed to, someone from staff was supposed to get back to us on, within that provision, are we required that we always have to pay, or is it something, because we're talking about that this could be a very expensive item for the taxpayers of Moline to pay for the relocation of all of those items if they are going underground. And so, did we ever get an answer on that?
Answer from whom?
Well, you said that you were going to get
Yeah.
the answer for us.
Yeah, when I brought that issue up, I mean, part of the research that I did, I found that when TIF 1 was being done, that there was a history of the city burying and undergrounding utilities downtown, and the city paid for that. They did not pay for the lines that are on River Drive close to the new bridge because of those are high power lines, right? They don't get buried customarily or ordinarily. So there was a history of us doing that. And we would probably continue doing that even on 7th Street when the reconstruction happens, because utilities, as a rule, don't pay to bury their lines. They just don't.
The question was, is it required?
7th Avenue.
I mean, 7th Avenue.
Thank you.
The question was, is it required
Trying to get close to my house.
that the city have to pay for it? Not that historically we've done it or whatever.
The city has to pay.
What? What was that?
Ask the question again, please.
The question we asked a couple of months ago, and that I asked, is it a requirement that the taxpayers of Moline have to pay for that?
No.
So staff is making a recommendation that we memorialize in our ordinance that even though the taxpayers of Moline don't have to pay for it, that we're raising our hand, hey, we'll pay for it all.
It's oftentimes negotiated. My history in government has proven that on projects, on reconstructions, it's oftentimes negotiated with utility companies.
And I don't have any problem with that.
Unless we as a city are doing it on our own as a reconstruction, then they typically don't. They expect that you're going to cover that expense.
I see
As a rule.
Margaret Christopoulos' hand, and then Mr. Timian.
So I agree with you, Bob, that everywhere that we looked at this, we found that when the city requires a relocation, the city bears the cost.
Thank you. Mr. Timian.
I'm curious to know which section we're looking at, because the section I see says that it is of no cost to the owner, meaning the property owner, not the utility owner. So I could be looking at different sections here.
No, the owner is the
The-
owner of the utilities.
Yeah, the owner is the utility.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. And I'm assuming again that this was something, as was mentioned with the other things, that was discussed in the working group.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Went.
Well, clearly, the utilities don't want to pay for it, so I'm sure in the working group, they've said, oh, this is a terrific idea. We would love for the taxpayers to pay everything. But I think to Margaret's point, is it, because you and Bob both oftentimes say, well, this is just kind of generally how it is, or whatever. My question is that legally required? And that's where we had the conversation is, maybe if we made them, within the ordinance, tomorrow do it, that may not be allowed. But, and this is where we maybe amortized it, it said, hey, anything that's changed 5 years from now, then it would be the utility owner's requirement to pay for the change. That's why we had that conversation.
Mr. Vitas.
I'm going to throw a hypothetical out there because I think it's an accurate hypothetical based on what just happened here very, very recently with the tornadoes and the high winds. 180 poles were destroyed. 180 that were reported to me by Mid-American. So hypothetically, 180 poles go down. And let's say that there's 20 going down just one road because that was the path of the tornado. What you're suggesting possibly is that once the pole's been destroyed and the wires are on the ground, that from that point forward, those lines should be buried.
What I'm asking is that.
That's what I think you would like to see, Alderman. And I don't disagree. It's nice not to have to look at cables, but it's a fact of life. It's a country of cables. We're a city of cables.
Not in every community.
Not every, no, well, be careful because the communities you're talking about are new communities, much newer.
Not all.
This is an older community. But that's a good example, is what do we do in the case of a crisis when you have mass destruction? Because it could happen. Could happen, and at that point, do they go in and they put hardened poles like they do in Florida? To combat tornadoes that are buried inside the hurricanes? They harden the poles. They don't take them down. They harden the poles. And where it's buried is typically in the subdivisions. But to get to the subdivisions, you got lines running above. And that's the way it's done in a very modern state.
Mr. Schmidt.
I would imagine a storm may not be the best example because we'd have to put in such a provision. Because in that moment, to require them to bore when we really just need the lines off John Deere Road, we'd have to have an exception in that case. However, for a reconstruction project, like a major reconstruction through a corridor, I can see the same scenario playing out that way.
Another example.
However, I guess the concern that drives to me is the issue we just faced looking at MetroNet of requiring, or when we were considering MetroNet and going the undergrounding versus over, what led us toward moving away from that undergrounding requirement at all was the inability to require of one and not of all.
Thank you, Mr. Vitas.
One last example, and again, it's an example that we as a city need to embed in our subdivision control ordinance, which we don't have anymore, right? We need a subdivision control ordinance.
Amen.
I don't want to sit down and talk to somebody about putting in 250 homes on 300 acres without it, because basically I have no ability at that point. I mean, you're basically negotiating against yourself. But clearly, when new subdivisions are being built, and they will be built south of the airport, there's a housing shortage, right? It will happen. Everything will be buried. It will be required that it's buried. To get to a point, though, it has to get there. And they may have high-power transmission lines leading to a point, and then they could bury and underground it, as they do in other communities when they build brand-new subdivisions. They underground everything. All utilities go underground.
Point of information.
Yeah.
Mr. Went.
If we accept the changes that we have here, if Mid-American decides in that new subdivision that they want to go above ground, then they all can go above ground. The way that you have drafted this and that we are accepting this today, there is no requirement that in that new subdivision that it all has to be buried.
Well, and that's why I'm suggesting in a subdivision control ordinance it be required.
Mr. Schmidt. I think this might be your second.
Yes, ma'am. I think that the other issue with a particular language being drawn attention to is that While it does say, yes, in this case, it's putting in place that the city would be paying for it, this is actually giving us that authority to go to any utility at any time and say, we want that underground, we're paying you to do it, go do it.
Right.
It is actually granting us that authority, while also saying that we may negotiate doing otherwise here. I don't think that locks us in to say that this is saying that if we want them to put it underground, we will pay for it. And this is giving us that authority, so this is really giving us an additional power, clarifying that, as opposed to taking something away.
But my question, which still has not been answered, is are we required that we have to pay in those situations? Can we adopt a code in which, and maybe it's not tomorrow, maybe it's 5 years from now, that says we can do that, say, hey, we're going to do this, and we're going to tell you to go underground, but at that point, we don't have to put it on the taxpayers' backs, that the utilities would have to pay. That's the question I keep asking, that all I get is generalizations and, well, it's usually like this. This is a question that we asked a couple months ago. It still hasn't been answered. Is there the ability that we can put into our code exactly what Alderman Schmidt was talking about, but not have to put it on the backs of the taxpayers to pay for it? Can anybody answer that question?
Yes, Mr. Dykeisen.
I can't answer the question from a legal standpoint, but my experience was that, the council perhaps wouldn't put it directly onto their residents, but the utility would. So if you ask the utility to pay for it, it would just be a pass-through to the customers of Moline to recover
Which
the
technically
costs.
explains why what you found in research on the legal side presents this way that we see here in front of us. Thank you.
You're right.
All right.
I guess that's another question. Does Mid-American under the state statute of Illinois have the ability to do a special assessment within this community that's different than the neighboring communities?
They can put a rider on their franchise agreement,
But
which allows to recoup.
But that would be something that we'd have to accept.
Yeah,
No, they can't just charge our residents more money.
they have the right to include that. Now, I don't know whether your franchise agreement has that. Many do.
Yeah, I don't think it does.
Thank you.
That's the question, and this is why when we ask questions, we'd love to get the answers so that when we have this question discussed publicly, that we can make informed decisions. And because of this, I know we're wrapping things up. We are moving towards, there's not a requirement. You can force new ones to come underground if that's what the movement into the future is. I do believe that there is the ability within our power that we could, again, structure this in a way that we can require underground into the future and not put that burden on the residents. And also, I think that we should have more stick ability when these utilities are violating our ordinance. And because of that, I'm not going to vote for these changes.
Okay, thank you. So, clerk, please remind me, did that come in a form of an amendment? Or was this a discussion? It was discussion on the main motion. So we are now at a vote for the main motion, item 17.1.
Alderperson Waldron?
Aye.
Schmidt?
Aye.
Williams?
Aye.
Macias?
Aye.
Went?
Nay.
Timian?
Aye.
Moyer?
Aye.
Okay, that
6 ayes,
motion
1 nay.
passes. And we move on, excuse me 1 second.
All right. Item 15.1, a resolution authorizing the chief of police to accept the Moline Fire and Police Recruitment Campaign strategic proposals from TAG in the amount of $89,900.
This is 15.1 that got moved to
Move to
the
approve.
Second.
motion by Alderperson Went, seconded by Alderperson Williams. Discussion, yes, Mr.
Your Honor, at this time, I will recuse myself due to a real or perceived conflict of interest.
Perceived.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Macias.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was looking through the media buying plan, and I noticed there was some time slots being bought at local stations from like 6 a.m. to 7 a.m., 9 a.m., 5 to 5:30, 6 to 6:30. And our target audience is individuals 25 to 34. I know they do these media buys, and that's probably the best audience, the largest audiences, but I was just curious if they kind of went into detail as to why they only picked those times and not like, let's say, late night shows that might be a better target for local TV.
We did discuss that. I don't remember the rationale for that specific, but I can tell you, we spent a lot of time talking about connected TV rather than traditional broadcast TV. The other part of this strategy is that we asked them to create content that would be pro Moline and pro Moline Police and Fire, not just recruitment, so that we could work on building brand messaging that would live past just apply for a job. And so we are trying to develop this kind of holistic approach to not just targeting that 25 to 35 looking for a job, but trying to build, this is a great place to live, to work, kind of that brand messaging, and that particularly is kind of then now we have a job opening, right? So there was, if you look at the timeline, that was kind of in advance, an advanced plan, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I was just curious why the late night was excluded, if that was the target audience, but it makes sense they're targeting them digitally as opposed to the
Yeah,
broadcast.
so if you look through the plan, just to give you kind of a high-level overview, and I know Alderman Schmidt recused me, don't feel bad if I get something wrong and you need to jump in, but what I've learned through this process, basically we're gonna try to run this more like a political campaign, is that we're rather than just throwing stuff out there on a traditional Facebook, is what we do a lot, or LinkedIn, things like that HR helps us with, is using targeted profiles on the back end of the digital world, however that works. And so, looking at our specific profiles that they can somehow target on those connected TV devices, those social media devices, but then using some of the other kind of mainstream stuff for brand messaging.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, just as a disclosure, I don't think that there's a conflict, but just so everybody knows, my wife worked for a company beginning of last year that was subsequently purchased by TAG, and then she quit shortly after that. So if anybody says, oh, Mike's wife works for TAG, it was a long time ago and for a very short period of time.
Thank you. Mr. Timian.
Your Honor, I was just going to respond to Alderman Macias's question. I think that this could also work for maybe not the target audience, but their parents. And, and then, hey, did you hear?
Yeah.
So I think that,
Get out of my basement.
Saturation is a huge part of marketing, as some of us have been exposed to. And if that target audience is hearing it from 4 places now, they're much more likely to pull the trigger. So I think that, yeah.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, roll call, please.
Alderperson Waldron.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
Went.
Aye.
Timian.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays. And that motion passes. Item 18.1, a resolution authorizing the Director of Engineering to execute and attest to a change order with General Constructors for the South Slope Wastewater Plant Excess Flow Clarifier Improvements Project in the amount of $12,372.15.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Oh, how do I choose? Mr. Waldron, motion, second by Schmidt, coming around. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderperson Waldron.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
Went.
Aye.
Timian.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, and that motion passes. Item 18.2, a resolution approving and accepting proposed changes to prior contract language as agreed to by and between the negotiators of the City of Moline and the International Association of Firefighters, IAFF, Local 581, relating to wages, hours of work, and certain other conditions of employment for the contract term January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2024. Is
there a motion to
Move
approve?
to approve?
Second.
Mr. Timian and Mr. Macias. Motion, any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderperson Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, that motion carries. Item 18.1, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to
Wait.
execute.
18.3.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
18.3, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a professional services agreement with Strand Associates for design of improvements to the South Slope wastewater treatment plant in the amount of $3,827,500, and authorizing the director of utilities to execute any necessary related documents related to this work.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Schmidt, seconded by Waldron. Discussion?
Your Honor.
Yes, Mr. Waldron.
Tony, I see they've got.
He's over here.
There he is.
Tony, they have about a year and a half on design. Isn't that about the same amount of time we had for North Slope?
Yes.
Okay.
And just for council's information, the contract with Strand is slightly more than what we had budgeted in the three-year budget. However, the 2023 allocation will be less than what we've budgeted. I've discussed this with Director Barnes, and we will incorporate the added $175,000 to the future budgets accordingly.
Mr. White?
We had a we emailed, I guess, back and forth about, there's a number of things that are required. We have to do it for the permit to meet EPA guidelines and to meet the requirements. And then there was a number of things that were kind of wish list and would make things a lot nicer or easier or whatever. Is this scope for all of those things, or just the things that are absolutely necessary, or is there even would there be the ability to pare that down at all?
The answer to your second question is yes, there is ability to pare down the scope. As we work through design, we'll be working together to try and finalize things. One example is the facilities plan that was presented to you back in March of 2022 included a full-size laboratory. And as you know, we've moved the lab staff from South Slope out to the drinking water treatment plant. And so we would necessarily scale back the facilities down at South Slope to account for that. That'll account for a savings of about $250,000 to $400,000, things like that.
And so would this contract for design also proportionately shrink as with the scope, and does that have that ability, or is this
Yes.
okay, I just wanted to make sure that if we,
Thank you.
or the next council pairs it, that, okay.
Thank you very much. There's nothing further. Roll call, please.
Alderperson Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, that motion carries. Item 18.4, a resolution approving a special event application from the Project of the Quad Cities for Pride Week at Bass Street, LGBTQ community events, specifically a parade on River Drive and a Pride Party at Bass Street Landing on Saturday, June 17th, 2023, and a 5K road race fundraiser on Sunday, June 25th, 2023.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Timian, seconded by Alderperson Macias. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderperson Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Nay.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
6 ayes, 1 nay, and that motion carries. Item 18.5, a resolution authorizing the approval of a resolution for maintenance under the Illinois Highway Code for Motor Fuel Tax, MFT, section number 23-0000-00GM, 2023 asphalt project for the amount of $354,798.80.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Went, seconded by Alderperson Moyer. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderperson Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, that motion carries. Item 18.6, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a contract with Centennial Contractors of the Quad Cities for motor fuel tax, MFT, Section 23-0000-00GM 2023 asphalt project for the amount of $354,798.80.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Moyer, seconded by Alderperson Macias. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderperson Waldron?
Aye.
Schmidt?
Aye.
Williams?
Aye.
Macias?
Aye.
Went?
Aye.
Tamian?
Aye.
Moyer?
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays, that motion carries. First reading ordinances. Item 19.1, an ordinance amending Chapter 35, Zoning and Land Development of the Moline Code of Ordinances by enacting an amendment to the zoning map incorporated therein as Section 35-3103, 1522, and 1526 46th Avenue. Item 19.2, an ordinance amending Chapter 35, Zoning and Land Development of the Moline Code of Ordinances by enacting an amendment to the zoning map incorporated therein as Section 35-3103, 161 Fifth Avenue.
Thank you.
That is all I have this evening.
That concludes our formal business under miscellaneous. Just letting you know that I continue to pass opportunities along to staff, whether it be for signing on for different trainings, for opportunities for funding, or different policy items. And a couple that have come across my desk recently was one, Mr. Griffith, right? It was something related to tracking park usage using technology, and I think that kind of data-driven decision-making in the future for what we need in parks and what people are using, et cetera, will be helpful if it's something that turns out to be helpful. So I'm excited to hear about that. I also, just today, I need to send this to your favorite committee, the Public Art Committee. I got information.
I've been driving around town looking at the art.
I got information. I got information about an asphalt art project grant. So I'll be passing that along.
I think we looked at that in Florciente at one point.
Yeah, and there were some plans in
Nothing
what
got it.
Alex had shared about, downtown Moline, et cetera, when we first came on, that I remember had asphalt paint, artwork, et cetera. But anyway, so those are just some samples, and their awards continue to come through. They'll be coming through for you to see, as meetings progress. So congratulations to our staff that's working really hard to meet standards of professional organizations, et cetera. That's all I have. Mr. Williams.
I think the Latin Kings put a little art on the 6th Street Hill. Man, I don't know. But I'll save my tearful goodbyes for next week.
Thank you.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Macias?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Mr. Wendt?
Thank you, Your Honor. I do have a few things, and then I might do my tearful goodbye. One, sorry I wasn't here last week. I was at my daughter's soccer game, which they won, which was good in double overtime. But I wasn't here to vote for the form-based code. Glad that passed. That was something that I've been talking about for a number of years, and I'm glad we finally got over the finish line with that. One of the priorities when I got on council, and I'm glad we made it. A couple of things that have popped up and wish I would have brought over, and some, I see, welcome some of the people who are going to be on council and taking some of these chairs. Welcome, good to see you guys. And so a couple of thoughts of things. One came to my attention actually just this week, that a bed and breakfast is not, within our code, you can't even get a special use permit to create a bed and breakfast in a R2 district. However, we can have Airbnbs and Verbos that have no restrictions, licensing, anything. Hopefully that's going to change, but I think that is something we might want to look at. There are some older homes that might be good for bed and breakfast, which I much prefer than being cut up into fourplexes or really worse 6 or 8 plexes that you see with these single thing. That might be something that we should look at. Another, and this is kind of on the heels of the cannabis shop being approved on John Deere Road, but also with the enforcement that we've had with the video gaming that I think that the council should really look at having a similar ordinance for cannabis, no off site advertising anywhere within the city of Moline for cannabis. My concern is we're going to wind up with billboards all over the place and those sorts of things, as well as limited advertising. People who want the product will be able to find the product. I don't think we've got a big problem with that. Another thing, and this was brought up to me by a couple of residents, when we're doing large patching projects like we're doing down on 36th, we're pushing everybody to the southernmost lane or the northernmost lane. Before we do that, can we fix the potholes in the lane that we're pushing people into? Because if you're on that southernmost lane, you're pushed all the way over and you're rumbling, bumbling, stumbling that whole way, and there's just no space to move over to get out of the way of it. So that would be terrific. The other, and we kind of touched up base on this, and I thought it was great that we won the award for North Slope, as it was described as a unicorn. It's terrific and wonderful, and it was built and finished while I was on council, but had been voted on and decided on before. I highly encourage the new council and you guys to sharpen your pencil and go through what you guys wind up building on South Slope. Obviously, we want the wastewater to be treated and taken care of and all of those things, but a 38% increase in people's rates, I don't think we're in the position to build another Cadillac or a unicorn. I think that we need something that's functional, that services the residents of Moline, but I don't think that we're in a position economically to put that additional burden on our residents to make it the greatest state in the art. And we've got two, we got the number 1 and the number 2 waste treatment plant in the entire state. That's terrific, but I don't think that that's where our community is, and I don't think that that's the burden we should put on our residents. And then finally, I know that we're doing the switchover next week, so I'm sorry I won't be here to officially shake your hand and bring you in. My daughter's got a soccer game that I'm going to be at, but I do want to thank everybody. I want to thank staff, the other elected officials. I know sometimes I am a little bit more diligent, a little bit more specific, sometimes prickly on certain things, but I know we all are only interested in the best for our community, and I truly believe that things get better when people ask questions and question things that are just put in front of them. I mean, I think that even though only one of my ordinances got approved tonight, I think having a time frame in which they actually have to give notice to the residents is a good thing, and I think so. I think that was improved. I even got Waldron to vote for one of the amendments. So that I encourage the new
Not
people.
easily done.
Yeah, and I go home and I tell my wife when I get Waldron to vote for something. But it is something where it is really important, and it is good to question, play devil advocate, read through everything. There's a lot of reading to go through this. But that's our job, and I challenge all of you to do that. We as the council and our staff, our job is to provide service to the residents, to the taxpayers of Moline. It's not them to pay us so that we've got, things to do. It is us getting service to them, and that should be always our guiding principle through this. So, and also, I guess publicly, I'd like to throw my hat. I had given up a position on Plan Commission to join this board, and I know historically there's been aldermen in the past who have done that, and then when they left, when an opening came up, were appointed back onto Plan Commission. So I hope the mayor will entertain that and possibly PMT, because I think there's going to be some openings there. I'd like to continue to serve just with family and sporting events, and my son going into high school, it just wasn't going to work for me moving forward. But I also believe turnover 8 years is probably plenty on any one stint. And so refresh, get new ideas in here, and then who knows what the future may bring way down the line. So I appreciate everybody, and thank you very much. It was an honor serving the residents of Moline.
Thank you very much. Mr. Timian?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Mr. Moyer?
Thank you, Your Honor. I do have a couple quick things. First, I have a question, Mr. Vitas. Do you, and you probably don't know this off the top of your head, but typically for the volunteers who do the Keep Moline Beautiful stuff, there's usually a big celebration, gathering. Do you,
At the end of the, sometime like May usually. I think.
is it usually in May? I know we go to it, but I don't remember. It's usually at Riverside and the Pavilion.
Yeah.
I can't find any evidence of that.
I
I'm
haven't
being
seen
asked.
anything on that.
Yeah, I'm being asked about it, so I just wanted to
I have not gotten an invite to that yet, so I'm not sure if the date's been chosen, but
Okay.
we can check with Rod.
All right, thank you. And then I did want to throw a pitch out there for the East End cleanup, which is going to be this Saturday morning at 7 a.m., which is pretty early. I'll be there, but, and I'm doing this for Pat, or Alderman O'Brien, who's not here, since it's his ward now. But they're going to be doing a big cleanup, 7 a.m. We're going to meet at Public Works, going to follow the trash crews around and throw garbage into trucks. So it's a lot of fun. It's a good little group down there. I did have another question, or another thing I wanted to say about the Child Abuse Council had their fundraiser this morning. It's really great. We learn a lot about it, and I'm not going to get into that, but I know that we do a lot of referral to that agency, and we don't actually have a line item budget to support all the work that we send to them. But I know that from time to time we do budget for that, and I just want to maybe ask the future council to consider some small yearly stipend or something for the Child Abuse Council. They do really important work. And anyway, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Waldron?
Thank you, Your Honor. Similar to Alderman Williams, I'll save the goodbyes for the aldermen and the future council till next Tuesday. But tonight I do want to thank a core group of people that have helped me along the way, and that's the city employees. Almost every single department is outstanding. They're all outstanding, and the employees are outstanding. My 44 years here, I've never had a case where the employees haven't, when asked, been produced. They went through COVID without half their staff, so to speak, and still excelled. And so there isn't a finer group that I have worked with in my working career than the employees. And I'm gonna shout out a few people, I'd be remiss not to, that helped me along the way. 8 mayors, 9 city administrators, there's been a whole host of people. But meaningful people to me in my career was a gentleman named George Stevens. God rest his soul, he's no longer with us. But there was a lady named Therese Kimball who really helped me along in my career, and I have to give her a shout out. A gentleman, liked or disliked, a lot of you probably don't even know or remember him, a gentleman named Dale Iman. He actually hired me as the Public Works Director, for good or bad, some would say, the employees would probably say. But he helped me along in my career, along with Lou Steinbrecher and Mayor Reyes. Mayor Reyes actually appointed me the first time to the council, so I owe a lot to him. But really, the folks that really got me to this point and being able to leave and feel good about it are my Public Works employees. They were outstanding. They were always outstanding. I had excellent managers. I'm going to call out 4 of them. One of them is actually here, which is nice. J.D. Schulte worked in the fleet, outstanding, number 3 fleet in the country when he was there. A gentleman, a city engineer, Scott Hinton, was an excellent city engineer, did excellent work. Greg Swanson in water, mentor to Tony. Tony does good work in utilities, partly because of Greg Swanson. And Doug House. I often think of Doug when the river's coming up right now. And those of you that are around here now know what Doug used to feel like when the river would come up. but I want to thank the city employees. They are excellent, and we owe a lot to them. And that's it, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Mr. Vitas?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Okay. Any other staff? Yes, Mr. Lodi?
So they say good news comes in threes, and so I brought an award to you earlier in the evening tonight, but I'm happy to report to you that your water main project to extend water to Silvis has been selected for an APWA Project of the Year award. And specifically, APWA cited the regional cooperative and the mutually beneficial solution to the two communities' problems, as well as the impact agreement that council agreed to that produced safety standards and an expedited solution, as well as the expeditious nature of the engineering design and the construction. So Levi Jackson and I are going to go on next Wednesday night and receive the award on behalf, I forgot to mention, Bob Vitas, Administrator Vitas nominated the project for this award, and so thank you.
Congratulations. You guys did awesome.
Chief Galt?
I just wanted to take a moment to clarify Alderman Moyer's comment. Are you referring to the Children's Advocacy Center that was the breakfast this morning? Is that where you were?
Yeah.
Okay, so
That's-
two different organizations.
Yeah, because
So
that's every child.
Rock Island County Children's Advocacy Center is what he was advocating for today. So
Yes,
just to clarify.
yes, that's different than the Child Abuse
Child abuse
Council.
is now every child.
I just wanted the mic to go to where you wanted it to go.
Thank you so
I don't know what
much.
to say.
Because their gala, I think, is on
We have-
Thursday.
Oh, yes. Fire Chief.
I just wanted to invite everybody to the annual pancake breakfast Sunday at the Vikings Club, 7:30 to noon. It's organized by Local 581. They do a great job of producing a wonderful breakfast for a great cause, so everybody's invited.
Thank you so much. And if there's nothing further, I need a,
We have one
Oh.
comment for the second.
oh, yes, public comment. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Rafferty. I won't take a lot of your time. I just, Alexandra Elias, representing Renew Moline, my board chairman, Greg Derrick, and our entire board of directors wanted to thank you for your service to the city, and we wanted to acknowledge the service to the city. And I just wanted to sort of close out this meeting by, one, thanking you, but then reminding you, Renew Moline over the last, I've been in the chair, it'll be 5 years in June. Doesn't seem like that long. A number of you have had a lot more years than that of service to the city. But on a number of occasions, we've asked you to think big. We asked you to think big on endorsing the public art and placemaking plan. We've asked you to think big with ULI and the advisory panel and the ideas that they generated. And for the riverfront redevelopment and the Bridgepoint acquisition. And you have come through in all of those areas. And I think when you all think big as a council and you believe that those things are possible, the community believes it as well. I certainly believe it. I wanted to thank you for your support of Renew Moline specifically over these years, and also acknowledging our partnership and trusting us to manage the Moline Center program. We will continue to work very hard to continue your legacy of excellence. And again, just thank you for your service, and it's been a pleasure working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Elias. And without executive session, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Alderperson Went and Alderperson Williams. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.